The second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs are off to a banging start, and Hunter Hodies and I are here on today's edition of Locked On NHL to walk through the games tonight and recap last night's action on today's edition of Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. I am Nick Zararis, the host of Locked On Oilers. That is my co-host and my good friend, the co-host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. And we want to thank everyone that's listening to Locked On NHL and making it their first listen of the day. Locked On NHL, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, Hunter, my friend, we have a lot to get to. We're going to hit on the two games tonight. Those will be segment 1 and 2. We are going to start with the Vegas-Edmonton series because as the host of Locked On Oilers, I have depth and expertise to provide there that I think is particularly interesting. Then we are going to pivot to the other game in the Eastern Conference tonight, where we're going to talk about Washington and Carolina's struggle in quality versus quantity. And then we'll tie a bow on today's show, talking about last night's games, which were also quite fun. So, to start things out, Hunter, the Edmonton Oilers should try and build the whole plane out of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Evan Bouchard. It seems pretty good that you have 60-70% of the expected goals when a group of three guys is on the ice. They're playing so well, it doesn't even matter if they're playing with 39-year-old Corey Perry on the right on that line when they're out there.
Nick, even without them on the ice, they're still carrying the play. Connor Brown has been tremendous during the playoffs. Matthias Janmark, a.k.a. the janitor, is one of my best friends, likes to call him. Matt, shout out to you. Diehard Oilers fan. Love him to death. He's been also good during the playoffs. Corey Perry, he's usually a depth guy. You mentioned him, Nick. He's been great during the playoffs, too. I think Brett Kulak, a defenseman, he's also been good. And the thing is, you and I were texting about this morning. Nick, the Oilers are +4 during the playoffs this year when McDavid and Draisaitl are on the ice. That has been such an issue for them during the playoffs these last couple of years. It's not an issue so far. If they want to make a deep run this year, that has to continue. It can't just be the big guns doing their thing. Obviously, that's the biggest reason for their success because it's McDavid, Draisaitl, and to a little bit of lesser extent, Bouchard against the world. But their depth players are also really shining bright so far in the playoffs. I also will say this. Cal Pickard, he's giving them so far, Nick, at least average goaltending in the wins that they've had. He's made the timely saves, especially against Vegas in Game 1. Even though Mark Stone made his presence felt to start that series, the Oilers took it to them right after those first 2 goals were scored. It was a complete domination right after the Knights made it 2-0. And even in that third period, it felt like the Knights really couldn't gain the offensive zone at all. Edmonton put on a defensive clinic, and that's the one thing that really impressed me, man. You don't even have your best defensive defenseman in your lineup in Mattias Ekholm. He is so good at shutting things down in his own zone, but it didn't matter. The Oilers' depth on defense really stepped up against a dynamite team in the Golden Knights. And obviously the series is far from over. I expected to go the distance. I took Vegas in 7, but what a great start to the series it was for the Oilers. And, hey, Nick, do they want to try playing with the lead from the start, or are they just going to keep coming back from 2 goals down every game?
So that's a good question. And it's tied into one of the points I wanted to make in talking about this series. If you go and look at the box scores through the start of the playoffs and you just look at average time on ice, the Oilers' big boys, so on defense, that's Bouchard, Nurse, and Brett Kulak are all playing north of 24 minutes a night for 3 guys. They're nursing Ty Emberson along, who's only playing 9-10 minutes a night as the 6th defenseman. Then you look at the forward group where McDavid and Draisaitl are 23, 24 minutes, and the next forward isn't till 19, 20 minutes. And some of that has been of necessity. As you mentioned, they've trailed in all 5 of these games that they've won and on this 5-game winning streak in the postseason. And that has benefits and that has drawbacks. Obviously, I said this on the Locked On Oilers that went out today. In an ideal world, you would just play McDavid and Draisaitl 60 minutes a night. But we know at a certain point, the more you play guys, the returns start to diminish. And the Oilers have yet to find that upper boundary so far, at least, as far as minutes and where that fall off in production comes. I think you can make a strong argument. You saw the end product of that during that third period of Game 7 of the Cup final last year, where they played, I want to say, 6 of the final 10 minutes, and they got one good shot on goal in those final 10 minutes because those guys were dead. They just simply played too much. And of course, if you're Chris Knobloch, you can't be coaching for the Stanley Cup final. That's a month and a half away. You got to win these games right now. So you got to play McDavid and Draisaitl every third shift. You got to run that fourth line, maybe 10 shifts the whole game. There's a lot to unpack here as far as the strategy on a game-by-game basis. You know, I put together in that note sheet for today. You compare that to the minutes allocation Florida was giving last year, the one that Vegas had 2 years ago, the ones that Colorado had 3, and the one Tampa Bay had. All of those teams rolled 4 lines relatively evenly. I mean, when Vegas won the Stanley Cup, Jack Eichel, their most common forward, he was only playing 19 minutes a night. You compare that to what McDavid's playing, where McDavid's pushing 25 minutes a night as a forward, and they've only played 1 overtime game so far.
By the way, can we also say that Jack Eichel versus Connor McDavid is real puck, man? Like that is a superstar matchup where every time they're out there together. Watching those two go head to head in Game 1 was so fun. Like with how Eichel is now defensively as a center, seeing him do everything in his power to outwork Leon and Connor during that game was something else. And then obviously, you know, they broke through later on in the game, but that's still one of my favorite matchups about this series. I didn't even shout out Evander Kane. I think he's also been really solid since coming back from that year-long injury. Trent Frederick, he's healthy now, Nick. He's starting to contribute a little bit more on the ice. Obviously, I mentioned Connor Brown. He dusted Shea Theodore in Game 1, turned him into a pile-on, if I'm being completely honest. But that's the thing, man, for the Oilers. Sure, they can double shift Leon and Connor. They can put them together, but their depth needs to keep stepping it up here. Because if that falters, it's only going to put even more pressure on the big guns to carry the load. Like the big guns got them back into that series against the Kings. But after that, the depth really stepped up as well. It was better than the Kings' depth. Now, to start the series against Vegas, the big boys are still cooking, and the depth has continued to play really well too. So that's also something I really want to watch out for here as the series goes on. Also, with regards to Vegas, Aiden Hill, I still want him to be a little bit better. I still think Vegas is going to be a bit more stingy once Pietrangelo is back too. Obviously, he was sick in Game 1, Nick. That was a major loss just because of how good he still is as a player. But I'm excited for the rest of the series. I think Vegas, there's going to be a much better effort in Game 2. But this is 2 heavyweights going at it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Colorado-Dallas series. I think you're going to see 2 teams just punching back and forth, with the last punch being the knockout blow. That's really, I think, what we have here, man.
So the last point I want to get in, and I do have a Vegas thought I wanted to share on the show before we move on and we take our first break. Number 1, if you're Vegas and you've been using Eichel as your defensive number 1 center with William Karlsson and with Mark Stone as his wingers, do you really want to use that in your McDavid minutes? Because then if they're out there chasing McDavid around, what are they supposed to do when it's time to play offense? Because they just spent 40 seconds chasing Connor around their own end. They talked about this on the broadcast quite a bit during Game 1, that over the course of that game, as it went along, Edmonton was doing a really good job of maintaining just offensive zone time. There was the one Eichel-McDavid sequence where they were back and forth, where McDavid kept pivoting back and forth on the left flank near the circle. Eichel kept him squarely in front of him, but he had to keep chasing him around back and forth. And that's taxing. That's grueling. And you follow around the fastest skater in the world for 40 seconds. You're getting that puck. You're crossing the red line. You're sending it in, and you're going for a change. So we'll see if Bruce Cassidy continues aggressively pursuing the Eichel-McDavid matchup, or if he tries to get that group out there against maybe the Oilers' 3rd or 4th line as a means of getting more offense. Because like you said, they had a hard time getting their offense going in Game 1 after they scored. And some of that was just, the natural pushback of the other team having a 2-0 lead. But at the same time, the magic number in the playoffs is 4. You score 4 goals, most of the time that's going to be enough. What's your path to getting 4 goals if Eichel and William Karlsson and Mark Stone are spending 25 minutes a night chasing around McDavid and Draisaitl? And sometimes it's Corey Perry, sometimes it's Zach Hyman, sometimes it's Evander Kane, depending on the game situation. So with that in mind, we are going to take our first break of today's show. And when we come back, Hunter, we're going to go and argue One of the great talking points, maybe in the history of existence, in quantity versus quality, and the Capitals and Hurricane series coming up next. Did you just realize your business needed to hire someone like yesterday? How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. We have all been in that spot where you and your team need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a major setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. And make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL ahead of a set of Game 2s in the second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. And going into the Carolina-Washington series, my sole question was did Washington have a guy that could outplay the environment? Because we know what the Hurricanes' MO is in the postseason in particular, especially when they play a team they're faster than. We've seen them do this to the Rangers. We have seen them do this against the Bruins and against the Panthers in years past, where once Carolina plays a team whose star players are better than them, the quantity versus quality debate doesn't matter as much because the other team, even if they only have 44, 45% of the expected goals, if you have, in the Rangers' case, a Panarin, a Zibanejad, a Bruins' case, a Pasternak, or a Marchand, or in Florida's case, Kachuk or Barkov, okay, we can make that work. We can win the game on the margins there. And Carolina's power play still not giving them enough to overcome their inability to finish at 5-on-5. So the question's very straightforward for Washington. Does Ovi have anything left in the tank? And then do you have anyone else who might be able to outplay the environment? Because Washington's going to play from a disadvantageous position this entire series. Carolina's faster, and they roll four lines evenly. They cycle harder. They forecheck harder. All of the environmental factors are against Washington in this series. So does Washington have anybody capable of superseding that environment?
Carolina is also really stingy in their own zone, Nick, especially at home. They are dynamite at home in the playoffs usually, at least for the first two rounds. Like it's been rare when they lose at home. They've already now stolen home ice from the Capitals. And you saw in that game for game one, the Hurricanes were skating circles around the Capitals that entire game. They held the Capitals to 14 shots that entire game. That's with overtime, man. That's with an OT. I know it wasn't that long into overtime when Jacob Slavin got the game winner, but that goes to show how good defensively Carolina can be in their own zone. They've been stingy all year, and this is their MO, man. Cycle, point shot, deflection, repeat. Cycle, point shot, deflection, repeat. That's how they play. And you saw Washington was really selling out to block those shots. They had nearly, 30 block shots in that game? It was virtually a couple every shift. That's what it felt like. And I've made this argument on my show when the Penguins have played the Hurricanes multiple times this season, because obviously they're in the same division. If you can get into the shooting lanes but also box out their forwards, you will have a really good chance to beat them because they rely on those deflections from their point shots. If Carolina wants to win this series, they need to do a better job of getting to the high danger. They need to do a better job of getting to the high danger areas and getting the quality chances more than the quantity. That's been their biggest thing these last few years with Rob Brind'Amour. You can fire, I'm just throwing an example out there, 40 to 50 shots on goal a game if you want to. You can be the Carolina Corsies if you want. But Nick, sooner or later, you need to turn these opportunities into high danger chances. Someone needs to be a dude and get these high danger chances, whether it's Stankoven, whether it's Aho, whether it's Svechnikov, whatever. Slavin put on a clinic in game one. I think he was the best player on the ice for the Hurricanes, in my opinion. And he continues to show why he is one of the best defensemen in the league. I thought Stankoven also played really well. He's been great for the Hurricanes throughout the playoffs here. But if they want to win this series, and I do think you're going to see a better performance tonight from Washington, They got to get the quality. They got to get to the high danger areas. They're not going to win this series if they don't do that.
So one thing I do find very interesting when we talk about Carolina is they have adopted this strategy, this methodology, how they play, and they've had it for a while now. Since Brindamore's got there, they have really leaned heavily in on the forecheck cycle, point shot deflections, rebounds, and they've never really had any high-end finishing talent. Like, don't get me wrong, they have good hockey players. Like, I'm not slandering Seth Jarvis, Taylor Hall, Marty Necas, who was on the team earlier this year, Aho, etc. Like, they have a couple guys. Like, Aho's a 14% shooter this year. Taylor Hall is a 14.5. Jarvis is at almost 16%. That's three guys who are well above league average. 4 or 5% is pretty significant when we're talking about shooting percentage of being above league average. And those are regular seasons, and you got to compare it within the context of their careers. But you have finishing talent. You could make as strong an argument as ever that this is probably the best forward group the Hurricanes have had in a playoff series. Last year they had Jake Gensel, yes, but this year you have Seth Jarvis, you have Taylor Hall, and Taylor Hall has looked really fresh and has looked pretty good in that series. But for Carolina, you need to finish the chances, or at least more of your chances. And if you're Washington, the number one thing you have to accept, you are going to eat some hits. Okay. And I'm talking about this in the context of breaking out of their own zone and surviving. And they were talking about this on the broadcast during game one as well. I think it was Ryan Callahan who had said it, was if you're a defenseman, you just recovered the puck behind your own net. There's probably a forechecker or two, because Carolina is very aggressive, about to bear down on you. If you turn the puck over, you're going to get hit. If you're going to get hit anyway, you might as well take that extra half second and make that first pass as good as you can possibly make it. And the second level of that, people forget that transition play is a multifaceted component of hockey. It's not just on the defenseman to make that good first pass. If you're a forward, you can't be flying the zone early, and you got to make yourself available for the pass. When you are stuck consistently in your own end for prolonged stretches the way Washington was in game one, you need those forwards to be 5-10 feet away from that first exit pass, as opposed to close to the top of the circle pushing the blue line. That first pass needs to be as short as it can so the puck can move, because if not, you are going to keep getting bear down on you and you're going to keep turning the puck over.
They're going to have to really work for their offense in this series. And you saw that on display in game one. The lone goal that they scored, I felt like Freddie Anderson should have had that. Like, Protas, nice shot. But Nick, I think 9 out of 10 times Anderson probably saves that. I think he would want that one back. But that all came off of a nice little mini on-man rush. It was probably closer to a one-on-one opportunity, but it was still a really nice shot. But still, they will have to really work for their offense in this series, especially with the way Carolina defends. They play every shift like it's game 7 of the Cup final. And you want to know why? That's because that's the way Rod Brindamore played when he was a player. Every shift for him was like game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, and that's how his team plays. So, yeah, they're going to have to take hits, Washington that is, and they're going to have to really work for their high-quality opportunities in the offensive zone. Again, they only had 14 shots in game one. Logan Thompson did everything possible to keep the Capitals in that game. You could have made an argument that the Hurricanes should have won that game by 3 or 4 goals with the amount of chances they had. Thompson was just that good. He's been that good all season. I think he's going to continue to be that good in this series. So again, for the keys going forward for Carolina, it's more quality over quantity. And for Washington, it's just honestly at this point that getting any chances they can get, because game one, they hardly had anything in the offensive zone. They hardly had the puck in that game.
It's a really challenging environment to overcome. And we have seen the recipe for beating Carolina in the playoffs. The Rangers have done it, Boston has done it, and Florida has done it.
It's their better players, their better core high-end players outplaying Carolina's big guns, and we've seen that on display these last few years.
And special teams. That's the other thing.
Yes.
That is an advantage that Carolina has definitively in this series. Carolina's yet to give up a power play goal in the postseason through the 5 games against the Devils and then the 1 game against Washington. So with that in mind, if you're Washington, you need your power play to get going if you want a chance in this series to mitigate some of the challenges you're going to face at 5-on-5. We're going to take our second and final break of today's show. When we come back, we will talk a little bit about last night's action between Dallas and Winnipeg and Toronto and Florida. Be sure to stick around to this edition of Locked On NHL. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's really easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Hand up. When I started using Monarch, I put in terms just how much I was spending on takeout. Now I am meal prepping, I am budgeting, and I am saving more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even set up long-term financial goals. So if you're ready to take control of your finances, be sure to use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year subscription. One more time, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out with Hunter and I on this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL as we set the table for two really good games tonight on paper. And last night, Florida-Toronto's got juice. Florida-Toronto has a lot of juice. And some of it is just the narrative and the energy. I think the fact you have two coaches who actively lobby the officials whenever they talk to the media, and Paul Maurice and Craig Berube, makes this compelling. I think the fact that Florida has unabashedly taken on the role of villain has made this very interesting. And I think everybody who isn't totally sour on the Leafs, and I know that's not a not insignificant portion of hockey fans at large, I think there's a lot of empathy for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the struggles they've endured in the postseason on the aggregate, if we're talking about maybe a plurality of hockey fans. And it has made for two really exciting games so far. And I am very happy to see guys that I've gone to bat for, like Willie Nylander, like Mitch Marner, having great series. And we'll see how long they deal with the Stolarz injury, if Joe Woll can continue to hold down the fort, and how long that Stolarz injury is going to be an issue. But right now, the Leafs are up 2-0 going back to Florida. I know when they played last time, this is what happened too. The Leafs defended home ice, and then Florida won 4 straight. The question now becomes, how does Toronto get over that finish line? They don't need to win a game in Florida to win this series, but it would help and go a long, long way if you're able to split 3 and 4 down in Sunrise and you go back up to Toronto with a chance to put that series away. And there's a lot of hockey left to be played, but Toronto has taken it to Florida through 2 games.
It feels like this is the first time I've seen the Panthers looked a bit gassed throughout a Stanley Cup run. It's a lot of hockey these last 3 years. Obviously, Nick, you go to the final, you lose. You win last year. It's hard to go to a final 3 straight years. And in these first 2 games, I see a Panthers team that looks a little bit tired. Like, and that was my biggest question. Like, they have the talent, and I felt like after the Tampa Bay series, they were pound for pound the best team in the conference. But will that continue, or will they start getting a bit tired? And I feel like that's part of it so far. I'm not trying to discredit Toronto in any way. They have been by far the better team in this series. Their depth is also really outshining Florida's in this one. Max Pacioretty, Nick, another massive goal once again.
Punk still got it.
Hey, dude, he got the big goal against the Ottawa Senators as well. He's still him. As
he's
the
a point-per-game player. He's a point-per-game player in the playoffs. He's 34 years old. He's had 2 Achilles surgeries.
How about this?
Point-per-game player.
Another big goal. Max Domi. Yeah. Did it in the Ottawa series too. They are getting contributions from players down in their lineup.
Nyes, who always plays well against Florida.
Yeah.
That's Nyes, who always rises to the occasion when the Panthers are in the mix. They got something going. There's a lot of hockey left, but it's hard not to feel the passion.
This is why you hire a coach like Craig Berube. He has been through this type of cup run before. He knows what it takes to get back there. And this Leafs team so far, looks like a completely different Leafs team than what we have seen under some other head coaches. They are playing more confident. They are playing with pace, precision, every other thing out there. They don't look scared. They don't look nervous. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure on them to close out that series in Ottawa in Game 6. Yeah, it looked a bit dicey for moments, but you know what? They stepped it up down the stretch, and they won that series. So far in these first 2 games, even though they're playing the defending Cup champs, they don't look scared at all. They have taken it to them in these 2 games. Now, granted, this series is far from over. We've seen the Panthers do this multiple times these last couple of years, Nick, where they're down 2 games in a series and then they can just rile off 4 straight wins, 3 wins in 4 games. They have what it takes. I think Bobrovsky is going to be better. I think he has struggled in these first 2 games, but we all know we've seen what he can do when the stakes are really high, even though the Panthers can be down in a series. I think Barkov could also be a little bit better. This series is still not far from over, but for the Leafs, this is a dream start. It honestly is. The core 4 playing great. You're getting your depth players to really step up. Joseph Woll has been really good in relief for Anthony Stolarz. And again, they're getting really good coaching so far from Craig Berube. I can't say enough about how the Leafs are going right now. As for the other series, my friend Mikko Rantanen, I think a lot of people disrespected him for just a very small sample size. Nick, this guy's a top 15 player in the league, man.
He's been like top that. 10.
Yeah, I mean, you can easily make that argument. But Nick, because he had 25, 30 bad games, I guess he stinks now. Like, he's always been this good. He was dynamite. I said it on Locked On Penguins last week. We're not allowed to say this word. What he did to Colorado in Game 7 was the biggest FU performance to a former team I have ever seen. Like, just tremendous stuff. He then gets another hat trick in Game 1 against Winnipeg. And I thought Hellebuck was actually fairly fine in that game. I'm not really going to crap on him for that effort. That was a really good game to watch. But how about Rantanen, man? Just putting this team on his back right now.
The graphic they flashed where it was like hat trick in last 2 periods was the most insane thing I've ever seen on a score bug. Oh yeah, he's had 6 goals in the last 2 periods. He assisted on 12 straight points. I think he set the record for goal contribution consecutive.
He had 11 points in the final 3 games of that series against the Avalanche, and then he gets a hat trick to start this game against Winnipeg. Dude is nasty.
Anytime you're in a conversation where the guy who had the record before you is Mario Lemieux, I think we're safe to say you're pretty good at puck. And look, is Rantanen's underlying numbers as where you would want them to be, what you're paying him? No. But at the same time, and I'm going to give you a very smart response, the goals are expected by who? Who is expecting these goals? When can they come? Someone like Rantanen is talented enough to supersede that he is playing, 45, 46% expected goal share hockey. It's different from what we have seen from some of these other teams. And Dallas is probably going to get to drop Miro Heiskanen in there at some point in this series, which is going to go a long way for them. And I'll give a lot of credit to the Jets, who have a lot of juice. They are getting energy. They play with a lot of energy. I want to see someone make something happen for them. I think they need that in this round to kind of settle the nerves, whether that's a great Hellebuck start, which I think would probably go the longest way. If that's a great Kyle Connor game, if that's a great Mark Scheifele game, you need one of your big boys to kind of stable the waters a little bit after Dallas's best player just did that to you. It would go a long way in just calming everything down. Of course, they've only played 1 game. There's a lot of time to go. But you want to get in this series. You want to split on home ice going down to Dallas with a 1-1. And you want to put yourself in a position where you don't need to do anything crazy to win the series overall.
And hey, always helps when Jake Ottinger continues to just light it up for Dallas. Yeah. I mean, this is, I think, the best he's played in the playoffs since that crazy series a few years ago against the Flames, man. Like, he is playing right now like a top 10 goalie. And honestly, if we were to make this decision right now, I think he would be the Team USA starter in the Olympics, just with the way Hellebuck has gone in the playoffs, at least, again, with that sample size. But yeah, I think they're going to get Heiskanen back sooner rather than later. It was great, Nick, that they did get Robertson back for Game 1. He missed that entire series against the Avalanche. He looked a little rusty at times, but
of course,
again, he's been out for a little bit. So it's going to take a few shifts to really knock that rust off. But once Heiskanen comes back, that's going to fix a whole bunch of issues on the back end. And heck, I can't even believe I'm even saying that, because the right side, even though it's a bit of a makeshift, they're still performing admirably well, but it's still going to be that much better once he returns. But I still think this series is going to go the distance, in my opinion. Yeah, I know it stinks for Winnipeg that they lost Game 1, but I felt like Hellebuck played a mostly fine game. Mikko Rantanen decided to go God mode. Sometimes you got to tip your cap to someone like that. But this is going to be a fun series as well. I know a lot of people pick the Stars to win this one rather comfortably. I think the Jets are going to really make this a great series.
And Winnipeg Jets, if you're listening, if you want to get the whiteout shirt I ordered here faster, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. I'd like to wear that to the gym at some point before the playoffs are over. Had to pay $18 shipping for it to get here down to the States. So looking forward to wearing it, but the faster you get it here, the better. Hunter and I will talk to you guys next Thursday. Thank you to everyone that made Locked On NHL their first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. If you are itching after a game ends and you still got the adrenaline going, be sure to check out Locked On NHL Game Night, which goes live after the last game of the night wraps up. Hunter and I will talk to you guys next Thursday. Everyone enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs.